Hello, dear friends. I understand that, before we drink the last glass of our champagne, my speech is the last, so I will try to make it interesting. So my speech is the peculiarities of simultaneous interpretation in the UN system. I would like to share my experience of internships in the European office at Geneva and UN headquarters in New York, and I would like to share my professional experience as well. So opposite to your mind, it's not only the Security Council, it's a whole system. The UN is a whole system dealing with all the issues in the world. That's the organizations that regulates avia transportation, different agricultural programs, and International Monetary Fund that provides for development of developing countries of the world. And the interpreters in this system are in Secretariat, and Secretariat is a department in several countries, Vienna, Geneva, New York, and this organization hold their meetings there. So interpreters in the UN organization work with various topics, and the first thing I would like to mention is the topics we are sometimes dealing with maybe during the week of working. First of all, the UN is an organization which is really traditional. Here is the notion of UN speak is very important. You cannot say in Russian "Штаб-квартира ООН." This term was thought up by the journalists, international journalists, direct translation from the English headquarters. In the documents, it is written in Russian, Центральное учреждение ООН. Why is it so? In this photo, we can see the central office in New York. The UN headquarters is a skyscraper, 39 stories. That's the most interesting building. You can see it. It's a two-story building, and on the second floor there was a canteen, and at the corner you can see the translators service, because they can approach the stairs and go directly to the canteen. But now they are transferred. They are somewhere in this building. You can see the General Assembly building with a dome, and behind this skyscraper you have a hall where the meetings take place. So in Russian we call it Центральное учреждение ООН, because it's the whole complex. It's not only the headquarters. But there are other examples I would like to share with you. That's the European office at Geneva. I show these photos because there are a lot of traditional things the interpreter should know about in order to interpret in the style of organization and know this. That's a stool, that's a chair with a broken leg. It's a great story because that broken chair is provisional when the Convention on Opposition of Landmines and Cluster Bombs was signed. The convention was signed, ratified, and the broken chair remained there. It used to be provisional, but it remained here. And the rules of procedure were accepted at the end of the 1940s, and they were called provisional rules of procedure, but they exist now as well. And it's very funny when people say, okay, now we are acting according to the provisional rules of procedure. There are no consistent things that are not provisional. That's a hall. Each hall has its story. The atmosphere you are when you're working with the UN organizations. It's one of the most famous halls. That's a hall number 12 in Geneva. Here, the Human Rights Council meetings take place. All interpreters are over there. It's like an aquarium. You can see the whole. And on that side, there is a place for tourists. People who have special cards can go there, can admit. And there are special booths for young generation preparation. And each hall is a present of each country. For example, there is a hall of Kazakhstan, of Qatar. Each one has its own traditional style because the organization survives according to the commitments of these countries. And such a commitment may be a creation or a decoration of this hall that reflects the peculiarities of this country. Here, I would like to remind you about the movie The Interpreter. I'm not sure if all of you have seen it. Please raise your hands, those of you who have seen it, so I can go back to you. It will be interesting for you to see which failures are there in the film. The film is great. It shows the atmosphere in the booth, but there are moments that they are not in the film. The translator, Nicole Kidman, she was going with a bag. She wanted to go somewhere with a bag. She has a large bag with her, and she carried it to the building of the General Assembly. Interpreters are on the third story there. The exit is over there on the left side, and there is a place for interpreters. There are places where you can store your bags. And why was she going over there if she was in a hurry when the exit was right over there? But the film directors decided to do it the other way, and the scenario itself, she was during the night herself in the hall of the General Assembly. The hall is set up for each meeting separately because new speakers may come, new combinations may come, and after the meeting is finished, the system just stops functioning. It's a Hollywood, it's just a movie, but such failures, I noticed them, and it was quite weird and funny for me. So going on with a traditional topic, one should interpret within the frames of tradition. For instance, the charter text, the United Nations Charter is always in the booth because many speakers are citing that, and one should know what is written there and to read it aloud quickly. For instance, we, the peoples of the United Nations, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, etc., etc. And please pay your attention to the style because that translation was made at the end of 1940s, and the first translators were the representatives of immigration that were migrants from the Tsar Russia, and their language was really specific, was really peculiar. You can see it, how it was translated into Russian. Nowadays, maybe no one translates in that way. You should be familiar with these traditions, and you should not go to the side. So we are going on. And now concerning the topics, what can up within 1 week? Topics may be different: transport of dangerous goods, geospatial planning. People are trying to connect all systems of coordinate into one system, which can be used in automobiles, for instance, smart cities. Because the cities of the future, how they may look like, even the potato tuber structure combinations may be discussed in order to create the standards, and oil extraction, for instance. Here, I would like to tell you a joke. There is a conversation in a translation canteen. One interpreter asks the other, "What do you think? What is better, dried fruit or torture?" The other one answers, "I think torture." Here they are speaking about the Working Party on Standardization of Dry and Dried Fruit and Committee Against Torture. Because on dry fruits there are different terms: shrinking, weight loss, and with tortures everything is understandable. And in the UN, you can meet the peace ambassadors. These are famous people of this world, athletes, actors, the most famous people, like the recent ambassadors. Is a climate agreement ratification. Leonardo DiCaprio was there. He deals with the question of protection of biodiversity and rational use of marine and forest resources and the problems of climate change. Or Charlize Theron, who deals with HIV problem and the issue of protecting women against violence. These people speak non-diplomatic language, and they bring something new, and that creates additional peculiarities of translation because they may take part in different meetings. And as well, Nobel Prize laureates. Here is Noam Chomsky and Joseph Stiglitz. Stiglitz is famous for his experiments in economics. He is against the policy of International Monetary Fund. He is against the monetarism, against the neoclassical economic school. Chomsky is famous by his theories, not only linguistic works, but he has also some political developments, and Chomsky is one of the most cited authors in the world nowadays. And he is famous for his development of a burden of a white person term, and one should be familiar with that term to provide a high quality interpretation for such people during the meetings. It's always very interesting. It has a character because it provokes a lively discussion. And Steven Spielberg, for instance, speaks quite often genocide problems. A lot of famous persons are there, and there are peculiarities of translation for any of the representatives in the Security Council of the UN. Here in the photo you can see Samantha Power. She is a US representative in the Security Council. She is a journalist and she has a publicistic style as well. It's quite bookish. And the peculiarity of American diplomacy, she doesn't give the text beforehand because they make changes to their speeches. It's very last minute. That's why from the American delegation you can never wait for the text, for the script. And using her journalistic experience, she gives really bright examples. You should interpret, you should translate, recreating all emotions of the speaker. That's one of the most difficult speakers in the UN, and her speed is also very high. And the NGOs, there are a lot of them all the time, and there is a problem that they are placed at the end of the meeting because there is a regulation, and these NGOs have to represent their position.
Let's imagine that we've got a session and we've got 30 minutes left, and in the list there are 20 NGOs. Each of them would like to reflect their opinion on what should the chairman do. He says that we've got 1 minute for every NGO. And the speaker usually has 4 pages of the text, and he wants to show his position. So what does he do? Let's make an experiment, what it would look like. So the speaker should cut and make it really speedy. For example, an NGO is speaking, and just in linguistic purposes we'll look at it. For example, Humanitarian Council Jammu and Kashmir. Должна ли иногда использоваться сила для того, чтобы поддерживать мир? И так далее. And so on, because they've got just a minute, and after that there are many numbers, because numbers, they show statistics. В истории Кашмира и Яму с 1846 по 90 год страна очень сильно пострадала. and so on. There are references to certain resolutions, and in such cases, even if you've got the text, it's better not to use it because it will just interfere in your work, and it is better to interpret what you hear because then you only hear and you don't have to read. Let's continue. Quality of interpreting, which is needed in the organization. This is rather disputable questions. I won't stop at it for a long time. The translation and interpretation should be accurate. There should be complete delivery of information. And based on my observations, I would like to tell about the differences with the European Union. In the European Union, there is a great advertising. You can find it on their website. What is interpreting in the European Union? When the speaker speaks their own language, it's like making an omelette, and if you're using through an interpreter, it's like making some very specialized cuisine. And in the UN, we are talking about accuracy, completeness, style, and if you can use idiomatic phrases, it is great. But considering the speed and the rules, remembering about idiomatic phrases is not really easy. Also, acting abilities, considering the speakers and the ability to convey emotions, but without exaggeration. You shouldn't make some extra sounds or something. Of course, you should have excellent knowledge of your mother tongue and very good knowledge of two languages, foreign languages. In our case, we are talking about English, Spanish, and French, because Arabic and Chinese, both they are unique. They work in both sides. They do retour, and there are 3 of them in each of the booths. For a interpreter with Russian, those combinations are important, and in those booths, people who do not have Chinese or Arabic as their mother tongue, they can't work there. Today, speakers already said about the specifics of Arabic. And what is also difficult is webcasting, because now your translation or your interpretation is broadcasted in the internet, and the potential audience is millions of people who may be listening to you. This is an additional factor. You understand what responsibility lies upon you, and the speeches, they are actually remain in the internet. A work of conference interpreter in the UN agency, they are regulated by the International Association of Conference Interpreters. What does it mean? It means that there are certain regulations and rules of the work. For example, sessions may be 3 to 4 hours. If it is a session for 3 hours, there are 2 interpreters. They usually switch in 30 minutes. If there are 4 hours, there are 3 interpreters working for 40 minutes. You have more rest, but you have to work in bigger slots. And for example, there are AIIC rules about remote speeches. Each and every time there is a chef de queue, and he negotiates with the chairman. And if there is a remote speaker or a video, according to the rules, there should be a script. Considering that there may be some technical problems and the quality should be uncompromised. So if there is no script on a regular basis, the chef de queue may say to the chairman that we will not interpret this session according to our rules and regulations. And there are many examples like this which I could give. Teamwork. This is an extremely important aspect of work in modern conditions. I will give you an example. There are 2 interpreters in the booth. Let's take the Human Rights Council session. There is many NGOs I've mentioned, and some representatives, maybe they are in the UN for the first time. They should give the text of their speakers actually beforehand, because their topics is very specialized, but somebody forgot, somebody is working on his speech, and in your booth people are coming and bringing documents, one or two speeches. Your partner is working. So what you do, you should put numbers, because you've got the list of delegates. So it is kind of a friendly help to your colleague in the booth. It is very important, because you are a team and you should give quality interpreting. You are a team. Also, it is very important to write down terms for the next working team, and between the interpreters there's usually a box, and the speeches which have already been presented, they go there. The team is not very big, so the atmosphere should be friendly. In the booth, you should comply to certain rules. If you drink, you should not do it in front of the microphone, because it is really sensitive, and all the sounds, they go to the ears of those people who are listening to you. And in the conditions of strong requirements to the speed and quality of translation, webcasting, and live broadcasting, a very difficult to source documents. Your teamwork is of primary importance. This is especially important in the conditions when older interpreters, they go on pension, and younger interpreters come to substitute them. This is very important. Glossaries. Also, it is important to work on glossaries together. Now it may be done online. This is an example of a glossary on a humanitarian summit. The French booth gave it to me, and the team which goes to a certain event, they work in the glossary together. It reduces the time to work on them, because you can imagine that the reference materials are really difficult, and it is just too complicated for one interpreter to work on it. In the UN, there is a principle green in the blue. We thought we're really hard how to translate it, because blue is the color of organizations. Green is about ecology, so we decided to call it in Russian "экологизация под флагом ООН." Considering that there is a great number of paperwork, we try to reduce the quantity of paper, and we try to find opportunities to work with documents in electronic format to save our planet and the environment. And this is what done in every sphere, including interpreting sphere. So I would like to make conclusions. UN is reflection of modern world with the variety of topics, higher specialization. The requirements to interpreters, they grow, and the interpreters should be comprehensively developed people with good reactions, with good skills and knowledge, ability to understand new concepts quickly, analyze materials, have high speed of talking, to be in time with the speaker, have abilities to control the voice, acting abilities. Thank you for your attention.
As a colleague of Vadim, I would like to ask him a question. Do we have time for a pair of questions? Okay, so I will get some attention for me. So in Russian language is beautiful, and it's so the language of high quality, the stylish Russian language. What is that? Is it the high school of translation? Where did you train your voice? Yes, we have a special course of acting skills, of speaking skills. Alina Druzhina, she's the actress of St. Petersburg theater. She teaches this course, and all teachers try to provide the best quality, because we are trained by the native speakers, and we try to provide this beautiful environment. Do you have the speaking skills for Russian? Yes, of course. The Russian language, the mother tongue, is a very important part of interpreters training. Then, if we have any questions in the audience, the audience is hypnotized. Thanks very much for an interesting speech. Please tell us, on average, what is the age rate? Is there any limit for UN translations? Because I have seen a video with elderly people, elderly ladies. No, there is no age limit. Yeah, people retire. As I know, nowadays is 68 years old, as in every sphere. Interpreting, and Irina Sergeyevna, the head of the High School of Translation, is an activity that helps you to keep young longer, because it activates your brain and the skill to keep your brain acting and working all the time, and simultaneous interpretation provides for that. And it's really great that elderly people are working as well, and they have experience that's valuable. And any words, comments, but please use the microphone. I would like to ask a question. Nowadays, are gadgets used by simultaneous interpreters? Many glossaries are printed, but are tablets used? Because I know many consecutive interpreters use no notepads, they use tablets instead. Is it encouraged in such organizations at the UN? Yeah, I already mentioned. That's really encouraged, because we have this principle, green in the blue. We have to reduce deforestation and increase the number of gadgets. Yeah, today you can use your tablets up to 17 gigabytes, all the materials of the UN activities during the 70 years of the operation, and do the search of terminology on the tablet, and all the glossaries are created in the cloud. So yeah, the electronization is encouraged. And the preparation, do you make self-preparation, or you are trained, software training? No, it's teamwork. We have a head of the section, and we have meetings to discuss different new opportunities to provide the work of high quality. That's a team that works together. That's very important. And of course, some new things appear. All these new things are reflected. I have a question from the point of view of freelancer. For instance, I would like to work as a simultaneous interpreter for the UN, but I cannot be subordinate. I hate white ties. Can I work for the UN? Can I tolerate that? I don't know. It's difficult to get there. You should get an invitation. You can do it through the network of different efforts, and you can do as a simultaneous interpreter. There is an exam, and there you can understand all the rules and exams there. And the rules of organization. Is there any dress code? No, it's not obligatory. Should I wear the tie? No. Simultaneous interpreters wear jeans as well. It's really democratic. Other rules are to be followed, yeah, because the organization is quite serious. For instance, Oleg managed to get to the UN. How the selection takes place, which interpreter has to go to this type of interpretation. Everyone knows the regulation, which speeches are coming up, the specialization of interpreter. Do they have the selection, some internal rankings, who makes them up? It's a question to the leader of the section, to the head of the service. They make such assessments. I know that quality assessment is regular. It's always traced, and the interpreting requires training. And you know about the meeting, about the session, you should interpret for 1 day before, and at the evening you get a message where you get informed which meeting you are going to work for. But because you are in that environment all the time, you get the knowledge in different spheres. Have I answered your question or not? As if I got it completely, there is a head of the interpreter section, and he makes a decision which interpreter goes where. No, there is a special programming officer for that. It's an officer who distributes interpreters and tries to combine experienced translators with less experienced translators, interpreters, and maybe some members of staff take their holidays. I don't know how programming officer works, but there is a special post for that. Yeah, that's how I was working as a programming officer for this conference. But those people, they have special knowledge, some structural knowledge about this. But I think you did a great job. You selected a great team of interpreters. Actually, I wanted to get this compliment. And one more question from me. Is it felt, this rigid hierarchy? And can one feel this team atmosphere? What is more important, team spirit or this hierarchy? Team spirit is more important. One can feel that everyone supports the colleagues. That's the most important feature in this work. Vadim, please tell us about the tests and the exams that should be passed for simultaneous interpreters. Which information do you require? The type of tests, what are the requirements? The requirements are, well, there are different requirements people get from the different sources. You can write the reviews of interpreters on the site languagecareers.un. The autobiographies, the ways of people, how they get to this organization is reported. Maybe the special schools where the experienced UN interpreters are teaching, and they teach you the approach they require for the organization. And then if you graduate with success from such interpreter school, which is quite difficult, then you can apply for an internship. That's a training, that's an intensive training within the system. And if you get selected for this internship, you are doing this internship in one of the departments, and then you pass the freelancer exams. There you get several texts, you get assessed. And then if you pass them, you can move further, move up the stairs. That's a very challenging job, and the competition is quite high. There are different stages of selection. You cannot just graduate and then get directly to the UN system. It's a long way that requires patience. You should be determined and to have a range of other qualities. We have time only for one question. I have only two short questions. How often does it happen, different failures for interpreters, and how they deal with such failures? And if a representative of a small organization comes, a charismatic, such as Vladimir Wolf Adolfovich Zhirinovsky, which are the recommendation concerning the acting skills and conveying his bright individuality. Such things, I will start from the second question that happens quite often between Israel and Palestine, for instance. That's our great performances and speeches, but here for an interpreter there are a lot of solutions, but interpreter should remain neutral. He should not do as a speaker, because the relationship are quite tight. The interpreter should not add up this tight. He should remain neutral. Concerning the failures, yeah, the head of the shift, the head of the department may criticize directly after the meeting. But such things do not happen because everyone tries hard, and now